Okay, we continue to provide an overview of the book. Um, this is the book that we're talking about, and we're going to be focusing on chapter 6 of the book. The title of the book is The Pursuit of Human Well-Being, The Untold Global History. And this book is edited by myself. My name is Joseph Sergi, and my co-editor um, is Richard Estes. Excuse me. Um, So we're going to be providing an overview of chapter 6, and this chapter is titled How We Measure Well-Being, the Data Behind the History of Well-Being. I'm the first author of this chapter. Again, uh, and, uh, my co-authors are Richard Estes and Audrey Selyan. I'm a management psychologist and a named professor of marketing. The exact title is a Virginia Tech Real Estate Professor of Marketing at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech stands for the Virginia Polytechnic Institute State University. It's located in Blacksburg, Virginia, United States. And Richard Estes is a professor emeritus of social work and social policy at the School of Social Policy and Practice of the University of Pennsylvania. This is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States. Audrey Selyan is a specialist in technology policy and development studies, and she currently serves as a trustee for several nonprofit organizations, and she resides in Geneva, Switzerland. Okay, on that note, let me sort of give you an overview of this chapter, and I will read you a couple of introductory paragraphs. Um, and I think that should do the job. The study of well-being comprises substantial bodies of empirical work done by scientists working across many disciplines. From the natural sciences to social sciences to the arts, humanities, the nature and the social sciences, as well as the performing arts. The field of study covers important social advances achieved for people in general, but also for special groups who have been discriminated against on the basis of race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, and social class, among others. The goal of this volume is to present the historical and contemporary patterns of human progress, grounded in a combination of data and documented historical narrative that underlies true human experience. The empirical writings of well-being scholars tend to promote a fuller understanding of the social, political, and economic dynamics that contribute to well-being. In addition, through attention to the public policy implications of their research, well-being scholars seek to advance well-being in individuals, families, communities, entire countries, geopolitical regions, and the world as a whole. Although the study of well-being is multidisciplinary, research practitioners are clustered primarily in the fields of sociology, political science, economics, and psychology. All draw from for their inspiration from the fundamental knowledge of quality of life and well-being from the major philosophical, religious, and humanist traditions of Western, Eastern, and Middle Eastern religions and philosophical systems. The conceptual base of this book lies primarily in the broad-based social, economic, political, ideological, military, and other conflicts that have characterized much of humanity's throughout history. The most prominent thinkers about these topics have emerged over the past 40 years and include scholars influenced by the human atrocities perpetrated during and the subsequent developments associated with the First and Second World Wars, the Great Depression, the protracted wars in Vietnam and Indochina, and the recurrent conflicts occurring in the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia. The recent Arab Spring and subsequent crises in the Middle East have also contributed to advances in well being research. Starting from the broad perspective of well being on our planet and gradually narrowing our focus, a few simple grand themes appear. The increased threats associated with the development and proliferation of nuclear weapons, for example, are all too clear. The threat of nuclear wars has significantly mobilized global concern and action focused on improving the social conditions that exist in the world's most populous countries. That's China, India, and Pakistan. The United Nations Millennial Development Campaign, launched in 2005, is just one example of worldwide efforts directed at improving the living standards of people in deeply impoverished countries. In addition to many of the world's largest countries, members of the Nuclear Club now include smaller, poorer countries in developing Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, where the potential for their use in settling local, regional, and international conflicts is high. It is possible that increasing the levels of development for people everywhere may help abate the threatened or actual use by rogue individuals or nations of nuclear weapons in settling cross-border and regional conflicts. Hopefully, they will not become weapons of choice in dealing with global conflicts. It is a core presumption of the editors of this volume that peace and development are essential preconditions for advancing individual and collective well being. The other elements of interest that become evident as one moves beyond global security are health, education, and income, all core indicators of the United Nations Development Programme's Human Development Index. These three measures, which have essentially over time evolved to depict a general wave of improvement across the planet on all fronts, as well as people's self assessment of their own states of well being, form the basis of the organization and description of histories of well being presented here. When studying the history of well being in the various world regions, we first ask, how do well being scholars capture the quality of life of a country or world region? To build a complete narrative of the quality of life and well being of a specific country or world region, researchers use a variety of indicators that are complementary to one another. These indicators can best be viewed in terms of inputs, as for example investments, and outputs, as in terms of results. The outputs are specific conditions that can be expressed as both subjective and objective indicators. Subjective outcome indicators reflect the personal voice of those in the direct line of experience, with all the inherent personal biases and associated methodological inconsistencies in generalizing such perspectives to the population as a whole. Objective outcome indicators are more impartial, such as changes in average years of life expectancy, in infant and child death rates, and in rates of criminal activities. Many of these data are collected and disseminated by official government agencies and bodies. Input indicators describe broad-based forces operating in the microenvironments that impact the well-being of people individually and collectively. For example, if a country that was funding prenatal care for pregnant women wanted to measure the overall effectiveness of its efforts on the well being of women, it could compare the dollar amount of the financial investment which is an input indicator, to both a subjective output indicator, such as how well pregnant women felt they were treated by the prenatal care team. That's essentially a subjective output indicator, and an objective output indicator, the number of live births, for example. Such indicators include public and private investments in achieving that particular outcomes, the creation of policies that encourage people and organizations to act in a particular way, and the varieties of physical, social, and technological infrastructures that promote societal investments in particular areas or processes. In addition to input and output indicators, we discuss equity and technology indicators. Equity indicators capture society's degree of equality or inequality with respect to the distribution of various resources available to entire populations, but especially to those that address historical inequities that have persisted for historically disadvantaged groups such as women, children, the elderly, the disabled, and minorities. Technology indicators, as the term implies, are designed to capture the extent to which technological innovation, especially in information technology, have contributed to societal progress and well-being at large. So the whole chapter really gets into those types of indicators. Output indicators, input indicators, equity indicators, technology indicators, and so forth. Okay, on that note, I think that is probably enough describing the content of this chapter. And I will stop here.